Ever noticed how your grocery bills keep climbing while your garden space seems to shrink? You're not alone. Most of us dream of growing our own food, but get stuck thinking we need acres of land to make it happen. That's where the Amish come in with their centuries-old wisdom that might just revolutionize your backyard farming game. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, aren't the Amish known for their sprawling farms? True, many Amish families do work large plots of land, but here's the kicker. Their clever growing techniques work just as well in a tiny urban garden as they do on a 50-acre farm. These methods have been refined through generations of practical experience, proving that you don't need fancy equipment or endless space to grow abundance. The Amish approach to gardening is like a well-choreographed dance where every plant has its place and purpose. Their methods might raise a few eyebrows, like using kitchen scraps in ways you'd never imagine. But there's profound wisdom in their simplicity, and their results speak for themselves. What if I told you that using these Amish techniques, you could grow enough food to feed your family for a year in a space no bigger than your living room? Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, stick around, because we're about to dive into their time-tested secrets that blend old-world wisdom with practical space-saving solutions. From their almost magical soil preparation methods to their creative pest control strategies that would make modern gardeners scratch their heads, these techniques might just change everything you thought you knew about growing food. And the best part? You won't need a single battery-powered tool to make it happen. My Amish neighbor always says you can smell a successful garden before you see it. She's right. And the Amish have known this secret for generations. That rich, earthy smell of healthy soil isn't just pleasant. It's the signature of a thriving garden that could feed your family for months on end. The Amish approach to soil preparation might raise a few eyebrows at first. You won't find them rushing to the garden store for expensive fertilizers or soil amendments. Instead, they create what they call black gold right in their backyards. This isn't your ordinary dirt. It's a living ecosystem teeming with billions of helpful microorganisms. One handful of healthy Amish-style soil contains more living organisms than there are people on Earth. Their composting system is a masterpiece of simplicity and efficiency. They start with a 3-foot by 3-foot area, ideally in a spot that gets partial shade. The first layer is always brown materials, about 6 inches of dry leaves, straw, or shredded paper. This creates crucial air pockets for decomposition. Next comes a 3-inch layer of green materials, fresh grass clippings, vegetable scraps, or young weeds. The secret ingredient? A thin dusting of existing garden soil between layers, which adds beneficial bacteria to speed up the process. The Amish continue this layering pattern, maintaining a ratio of roughly 3 parts brown to 1 part green materials. They're particular about moisture. The pile should feel like a wrung-out sponge. Too dry and decomposition slows down. Too wet, and you'll end up with a smelly mess. A weekly turn of the pile with a pitchfork keeps everything cooking properly. Within 3 to 4 months, you'll have rich, dark compost that crumbles like chocolate cake. Some of their composting tricks might surprise you. They add crushed eggshells for calcium, use coffee grounds for nitrogen, and even wool scraps for slow-release nutrients. The joke among Amish gardeners is that they're the only people who get excited about banana peels and coffee grounds. But those banana peels add crucial potassium to the mix. But here's where it gets really interesting. Amish farmers have mastered the art of crop rotation. They never plant the same crop in the same spot 2 years in a row. Heavy feeders like corn are followed by soil builders like peas or beans, then leafy greens, and finally, root vegetables. This rotation isn't just about preventing soil depletion, it's about building soil that acts like a natural water bank. Healthy soil prepared the Amish way can hold up to 20,000 gallons of water per acre. That's enough to fill a small swimming pool, and it's all available to your plants for free. The Amish also use what they call living mulch, cover crops that protect and enrich the soil when food crops aren't growing. Clover, rye, and buckwheat work hard even during the off-season, adding nutrients and preventing erosion. As one Amish farmer puts it, the soil is like a savings account. You can't keep withdrawing without making deposits. Their natural fertilization methods include aged manure. They insist on letting it age at least 6 months, fish emulsion, and compost tea, made by steeping finished compost in water for several days. The resulting liquid fertilizer is rich in beneficial microbes and soluble nutrients. These time-tested methods create soil so rich that plants practically jump out of the ground. The Amish have a saying, "Feed the soil and the soil will feed you." Here's a fascinating fact that proves their methods work. Studies show that soil managed the Amish way contains up to 60% more organic matter than conventionally farmed soil. This extra organic matter doesn't just feed plants, it's also a key player in fighting climate change by storing carbon underground. Of course, building soil this rich takes time and patience. But as my Amish friend Jacob likes to say, good soil is like a good marriage. It gets better with age and attention. Speaking of attention, while your soil is busy becoming amazing, you'll need to protect it from unwanted visitors who might try to feast on your future harvest. Those shiny bottles of pesticides at the garden store might look tempting when you spot the first holes in your lettuce leaves, but the Amish have long known what scientists are now confirming. Chemical pesticides are like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. These harsh chemicals don't just kill pest insects, they eliminate beneficial ones too, and can leave harmful residues in your soil for years. Recent studies have found traces of common garden pesticides in 90% of American households' drinking water. Even more concerning, these chemicals have been linked to declining bee populations, with some areas seeing up to a 40% reduction in beneficial insect species. The Amish approach? Work with nature, not against it. Let's start with their first line of defense: repellent plants. Marigolds aren't just pretty faces in an Amish garden. They're hard-working pest controllers. Their strong scent confuses and repels many harmful insects, particularly those that attack tomatoes and beans. Garlic, planted between rows of vegetables, acts like a natural bug spray. One Amish farmer joked that his garlic keeps away both insects and nosy neighbors, though he's still working on a plant to repel his mother-in-law's surprise visits. But the real magic happens when you combine different repellent plants strategically. Basil planted near tomatoes improves their flavor while deterring hornworms. Nasturtiums act as sacrifice plants, drawing aphids away from your valuable crops. Lavender not only repels moths and flies, but also attracts pollinators. The Amish call this companion confusion, creating a botanical maze that makes it harder for pests to locate their favorite plants. Then there's the hands-on approach. Every morning, Amish gardeners practice what they playfully call pest patrol. Armed with nothing more than gloved hands and a bucket of soapy water, they inspect their plants and manually remove any unwanted visitors. While some might cringe at the thought of hand-picking potato beetles or squashing cabbage worms, there's something oddly satisfying about this direct approach to garden defense. As one Amish gardener puts it, every bug you squish is one that won't invite its friends to dinner. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Amish pest control is their use of natural predators. They create what they call beneficial highways, strips of native flowers and herbs that attract pest-eating insects and birds. Ladybugs, praying mantises, and parasitic wasps become your tiny but mighty garden allies. A single ladybug can eat up to 5,000 aphids in its lifetime. That's better than any chemical spray. They also maintain small brush piles near their gardens to provide homes for toads and garden snakes, nature's original pest control specialists. A single toad can eat up to 10,000 insects during a garden season. The Amish say if you see a toad in your garden, you should tip your hat. It's working harder than you are. Water features, even something as simple as a shallow dish with a few stones, attract insect-eating birds. These feathered friends not only control pests, but also provide free entertainment and natural alarm systems. When birds suddenly go quiet, it often means a hawk is nearby, which helps keep rabbit and rodent populations in check. The results speak for themselves. Amish gardens typically show less than 10% crop loss to pests, comparable to or better than chemically treated gardens. But unlike chemical solutions, their methods improve year after year as the natural balance strengthens. Of course, protecting your garden from pests is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to growing a year's worth of food in a small space. The Amish have plenty more tricks up their sleeves for maximizing their growing potential, no matter what size plot they're working with. When most people think of Amish farming, they picture open fields and traditional outdoor gardens. But here's a surprise. Some of their most productive growing spaces are actually modest-sized greenhouses. These aren't the fancy glass structures you might see at botanical gardens, They're practical, efficient spaces that turn tiny plots into year-round food factories. A typical Amish greenhouse measures just 12 by 20 feet, yet can produce an astonishing amount of food. The secret lies in their clever use of space and time. While conventional gardeners might get 1 or 2 harvests per year, an Amish greenhouse can yield up to 4 full cycles of crops annually. That's the difference between having fresh tomatoes for a few months and enjoying them all year round. But what makes these greenhouses truly remarkable is their heating system, or rather, their lack of one. The Amish have perfected the art of passive solar heating, using simple materials and smart design. The north wall is often built from dark-colored stone or concrete blocks, which absorb heat during the day and release it slowly at night. This thermal mass effect can keep temperatures 10 to 15 degrees warmer than outside, even during winter nights. For additional winter warmth, they employ what they call the manure method. Fresh horse manure, layered with straw in deep trenches along the greenhouse's north side, creates natural heat as it decomposes. 1 wheelbarrow of fresh manure can generate enough heat to warm 100 square feet of growing space for up to 2 months. As an Amish farmer once quipped, it's the only heating system that creates its own fuel. The greenhouse layout follows a carefully planned pattern. Tall plants like tomatoes and climbing peas grow along the north wall, where they won't shade other crops. Medium-height plants occupy the central space, while low-growing leafy greens thrive in the southern exposure. Every inch is utilized. Even the vertical spaces between beds host hanging containers of herbs and strawberries. Ventilation is managed through a combination of roll-up sides and roof vents, all operated by simple pulley systems. During summer months, these openings create natural convection currents that keep plants cool without any need for electric fans. The Amish say a well-ventilated greenhouse should breathe like a sleeping baby, gentle and consistent. Water management in these greenhouses is equally ingenious. Rainwater collected from the roof fills storage barrels inside the structure. These barrels serve 2 purposes: storing water for irrigation and acting as additional thermal mass to stabilize temperatures. The water gradually warms during sunny days and releases heat overnight, creating a more stable growing environment. One particularly clever trick involves placing dark-painted water jugs between plants. During winter days, these heat up and provide a warm microclimate around cold-sensitive crops at night. As one Amish gardener puts it, every jug is like a tiny wood stove for your plants. Perhaps most impressive is how these greenhouses integrate with their natural surroundings. Many are partially earth-bermed on the north side for additional insulation, and their orientation takes full advantage of the sun's seasonal patterns. It's this attention to natural cycles and patterns that makes their approach so successful. Of course, having a greenhouse is only part of the equation. The real magic happens when you know exactly what to grow in it. The Amish have carefully selected crops that not only thrive in greenhouse conditions, but also provide the most value for the space they occupy. When it comes to growing food in small spaces, picking the right crops isn't just about what you like to eat. It's about getting the most food from every square inch. The Amish have mastered this art through generations of trial and error, developing what they call their power crop strategy. Root vegetables top their list of essential crops. Potatoes, carrots, and beets aren't just space efficient. They're what the Amish call triple duty crops. The roots provide substantial nutrition, the tops can feed livestock or enrich compost, and they store well through winter without requiring expensive equipment. A single 4x4 foot bed of carrots can yield up to 25 pounds of food, enough to provide a family with fresh carrots for months. Climbing beans are another Amish favorite, particularly pole varieties like Kentucky Wonder and Blue Lake. These vertical growers can produce up to 3 times more beans per square foot than bush varieties. But here's the clever part. Amish gardeners often plant these beans in what they call living towers. A single pole can support 6 to 8 bean plants, which not only produce beans, but also fix nitrogen in the soil for future crops. Leafy greens are the workhorses of the Amish garden. Kale, Swiss chard, and collards are particularly prized because they're cut-and-come-again crops, harvest the outer leaves, and they keep producing new ones for months. A smart Amish trick is to plant these greens in partial shade during summer, where they'll produce tender leaves long after most gardens have bolted and gone bitter. For fruit, the Amish focus on dwarf varieties that pack big yields into small spaces. A dwarf apple tree might only reach 8 feet tall, but it can produce up to 50 pounds of fruit annually. They often choose self-pollinating varieties like North Pole columnar apples, which can grow in a space just 2 feet wide. Herbs earn their space through multiple uses: culinary, medicinal, and as natural pest deterrents. Thyme, oregano, and sage are particular favorites because they're perennial, meaning they come back year after year without replanting. The Amish saying goes, plant herbs once, harvest for years. But perhaps the most interesting aspect of Amish crop selection is their focus on what they call volunteer crops, plants that self-seed and come back on their own. Cherry tomatoes, dill, and certain lettuce varieties are allowed to go to seed in specific areas, providing free plants for the next season. One Amish farmer jokes that these volunteers are the only workers you never have to pay. The Amish also carefully consider storage potential when selecting varieties. Long-keeping onions like Patterson and Copra are preferred over sweet varieties that spoil quickly. Winter squashes like butternut and Hubbard can last months in cool storage, providing vital nutrients through winter. For summer eating, they focus on high-yielding varieties that produce over a long season rather than all at once. Instead of single-harvest bush beans, they choose pole varieties that produce continuously. Rather than head lettuce, they grow loose-leaf varieties that can be harvested gradually. An old Amish proverb says, "Choose your crops like you choose your friends. Look for those that give more than they take." This wisdom extends to selecting varieties that not only produce well, but also contribute to the garden's overall health through companion planting relationships. Now that we've covered what to grow, the next challenge is figuring out how to fit all these crops into your available space. And that's where the real Amish ingenuity shines through. In Amish gardens, empty space is as rare as an electric tiller. Their approach to space utilization is simple but revolutionary. Grow up, grow down, and grow all around. Every cubic inch of garden space has potential, and they've mastered the art of using it all. Let's start with vertical growing, where the Amish have developed what they call the sky-to-earth method. Traditional trellises are just the beginning. They create living walls using a combination of cattle panels, strong metal grids, and natural materials like branches and twine. These structures can support an impressive amount of weight. A single 8-foot panel can hold up to 60 pounds of growing vegetables. Their favorite vertical crops aren't just the obvious choices like peas and pole beans. They found ways to grow traditionally ground-hugging plants vertically too. Cucumbers trained up strings produce straighter fruits and are easier to harvest. Winter squash varieties like Tromboncino can climb 15 feet high, with fruits hanging down like musical instruments. Even melons can go vertical with proper sling support. Small-fruited varieties like Minnesota Midget are perfect for this. But the real genius lies in their multi-level growing systems. A typical Amish vertical garden might have morning glories or grapevines creating shade on top, climbing beans at mid-level, and shade-tolerant crops like lettuce below. This three-dimensional approach can triple the yield of a traditional garden plot. For horizontal space, they've perfected the raised bed system long before it became trendy. Their beds are typically 4 feet wide, just narrow enough to reach the middle from either side, and as long as space permits. But here's where it gets interesting. They use what they call intensive spacing. Plants are placed just far enough apart to reach mature size, no more. Where modern gardening guides might suggest planting cabbages 24 inches apart, the Amish might plant them 16 inches apart and harvest them slightly smaller but more numerous. Square-foot gardening takes on new meaning in Amish hands. They divide their beds into 1-foot squares, but instead of following standard spacing guides, they push the limits of what each square can handle. A square that traditionally holds 1 broccoli plant might host 2, with careful pruning keeping them productive. One Amish gardener jokes that his plants are like teenagers at a dance. Close enough to touch shoulders, but not so close they can't breathe. Container gardening isn't overlooked either. The Amish repurpose everything from old water troughs to wooden barrels. Their container gardens often feature edible landscaping, beautiful and productive plants working together. A single large container might host a dwarf fruit tree surrounded by herbs, with trailing strawberries spilling over the edges. Their raised beds often incorporate built-in trellising systems that do double duty as garden fencing. A cattle panel bent into an arch between two beds creates a tunnel that's both a walking path and a growing space. These garden tunnels can produce up to 20 pounds of climbing vegetables per linear foot. Underground space isn't wasted either. Root crops are interplanted among above-ground plants, taking advantage of deeper soil layers. Radishes grow between lettuce plants, carrots mature under climbing peas, and potatoes develop beneath corn stalks. The Amish have a saying, "A garden grows in layers like a well-made cake." Each layer, from the soil to the sky, plays its part in creating abundance. But to maintain all these growing spaces efficiently, you need the right tools for the job. Last spring, I spent $400 on a fancy electric tiller that now sits gathering dust in my shed. Meanwhile, my Amish neighbor Jacob tends his entire garden with tools that his grandfather used, and they're still going strong. There's a lesson here about simplicity that goes beyond just saving money. The heart of Amish gardening equipment is the hoe collection. But these aren't your hardware store variety hoes. Each one is carefully chosen for specific tasks. The stirrup hoe or scuffle hoe slides just under the soil surface to slice weeds without disturbing plant roots. The Warren hoe, with its pointed end, creates perfect seed furrows and handles precision weeding around delicate seedlings. And the standard draw hoe, it's their version of a Swiss Army knife, weeding, mounding, and even harvesting root crops. Their hand trowels tell a similar story. Made from high-carbon steel rather than the flimsy stamped metal you find in most stores, these tools are built to last decades. The Amish often forge their own, creating perfectly balanced tools that feel like natural extensions of their hands. "A good trowel should outlive its owner," one Amish gardener told me, showing me his grandfather's trowel, still sharp and sturdy after 50 years of use. For larger areas, they rely on the broad fork, a human-powered alternative to rototilling that's gentler on soil structure. With two handles and multiple tines, it loosens soil deeply without turning it over, preserving the natural soil layers. It might take more time than a power tiller, but as my friend Jacob says, you're not just working the soil, you're reading it with your hands. Their pruning tools are equally impressive. Hand pruners are kept razor sharp, making clean cuts that heal quickly. Pruning saws are selected for specific tasks, fine-toothed ones for precise cuts on fruit trees, larger ones for maintaining trellises and arbors. These tools often come with leather holsters that attach to a belt, keeping them within easy reach but safely stored. One of their most ingenious tools is the wooden dibber, a simple pointed stick used for making planting holes. But their dibbers often have depth markings and slightly flattened sides that prevent them from rolling away. Some even incorporate a seed dispensing mechanism, a small groove that holds just the right number of seeds. The Amish wheelbarrow deserves special mention. Built with a steel wheel rather than an inflatable tire, it never goes flat. The tray is designed with a slight taper that makes dumping loads easier, and the handles are positioned to maximize leverage while minimizing backstrain. They're not cheap, but they're practically indestructible. For harvesting, they use hand-woven harvest baskets that are works of art in themselves. Made from split oak or hickory, these baskets are light but incredibly strong. They're designed with slightly sloped sides that make them stackable when empty, saving storage space. The weave is open enough to let dirt fall through, but tight enough to hold small produce like cherry tomatoes. Water management tools are equally well thought out. Long-handled watering cans are balanced to reduce wrist strain, and their spouts are designed to deliver gentle streams that won't damage delicate seedlings. Rain gauges are often handmade from recycled glass, marked with precise measurements that help track rainfall patterns over the growing season. Their tool maintenance routine is religious in its regularity. Every tool is cleaned and oiled after use, edges are kept sharp, and wooden handles are periodically treated with linseed oil to prevent splitting. A well-maintained tool, they say, is like a well-trained horse, responsive, reliable, and a joy to work with. Of course, even the best tools in the world won't help if you don't know how to use water wisely, and the Amish have perfected that art as well. The average American garden consumes up to 3,000 gallons of water per month during growing season. Meanwhile, Amish gardeners typically use less than half that amount while growing more food. Their secret isn't about using less water, it's about making every drop count. The foundation of Amish water management starts with rain collection. A typical Amish garden incorporates multiple rain barrels strategically placed to capture water from every available surface. But these aren't just ordinary barrels. They're part of an interconnected system. The first barrel in line includes a first flush diverter that channels the initial roof runoff, containing dust and debris, away from the storage system. Subsequent barrels are linked with overflow pipes, creating a cascade effect that can store hundreds of gallons from a single rainfall. Their drip irrigation systems are marvels of simplicity. Instead of expensive plastic drip lines, many Amish gardeners use clay olas, unglazed ceramic pots buried near plant roots. These porous containers slowly release water directly to the root zone, reducing evaporation loss by up to 70% compared to surface watering. One ola can efficiently water a 3-foot radius for several days between refills. Mulching plays a crucial role in their water conservation strategy, but rather than using store-bought mulch, they create what they call living mulch systems. Fast-growing, shallow-rooted plants like purslane and creeping thyme cover the soil between larger crops. These living mulches not only retain moisture, but also suppress weeds and provide additional harvests. Purslane, for instance, is highly nutritious and can be eaten in salads. For hand watering, they follow the deep but infrequent rule. Instead of daily shallow watering, they water deeply once or twice a week, encouraging roots to grow downward. Their watering cans often have special roses spray heads designed to deliver water gently without disturbing the soil. Some clever gardeners modify their cans with multiple roses for different purposes: fine sprays for seedlings, stronger streams for established plants. Timing is crucial in their watering strategy. The Amish typically water very early in the morning, before the sun is strong. This allows plants to dry their leaves before evening, reducing disease risk. They also practice what they call prophetic watering, watering extra deeply when weather patterns suggest an upcoming dry spell. Their raised beds incorporate hidden water reservoirs, layers of composted woody material buried deep in the soil. These act like natural sponges, storing water and releasing it slowly during dry periods. 1 cubic foot of this material can hold up to 1.5 gallons of water, creating a backup supply for times between watering. The Amish are also masters of water recycling. Household gray water from washing vegetables or rinsing dishes is carefully collected and used on ornamental plants and fruit trees. They position water-loving plants like elderberries and raspberries where they can catch runoff from pathways during rain. Perhaps their most innovative technique is the keyhole garden design, a circular raised bed with a central compost tower that doubles as a watering station. Water poured into the central tower filters through the compost, creating nutrient-rich irrigation that reaches plant roots from below. This system can reduce water usage by up to 80% compared to traditional garden layouts. Drought planning is built into their garden design. Plants are grouped according to water needs, with drought-tolerant species acting as protective barriers around more water-demanding crops. During dry spells, they often employ the cup method, placing small cups or bottles with tiny holes near plant bases for slow-release watering. Water conservation and pollination go hand in hand in Amish gardens. The same water features that help irrigate their crops also attract essential pollinators, creating a vibrant ecosystem where every creature plays its part. Without pollinators, even the most fertile garden would produce only a fraction of its potential. The Amish understand this deeply, treating their garden's pollinators like unpaid but invaluable employees. While modern agriculture often relies on rented honeybee colonies, Amish gardeners create permanent habitats that attract and sustain native pollinators year-round. Their pollinator gardens aren't just beautiful, they're strategically designed to provide continuous blooms from early spring through late fall. Early bloomers like crocus and winter aconite attract the season's first bees, while late-blooming asters and goldenrod support pollinators preparing for winter. This constant succession of flowers ensures that beneficial insects stick around rather than moving on to greener pastures. Mason bees are particular favorites in Amish gardens. These gentle natives are incredible pollinators. Just 2 or 3 mason bees can pollinate as many flowers as hundreds of honeybees. Amish gardeners create homes for them using bundles of hollow reeds or drilled wooden blocks, positioned in sunny spots protected from rain. Butterflies get special attention too. The Amish plant specific landing pad flowers like zinnias and cosmos, which provides stable platforms for butterflies to rest while feeding. They also maintain small mud puddles as butterflies need minerals from damp soil for reproduction. These puddle stations often include flat stones that warm in the sun, creating perfect butterfly basking spots. The layout of pollinator-friendly plants follows what the Amish call the stepping stone pattern. Patches of flowers are spaced no more than 20 feet apart, creating corridors that allow bees and butterflies to move safely through the entire garden. Native flowering herbs like mountain mint and anise hyssop serve double duty, attracting pollinators while providing useful harvests. Now, with a garden full of buzzing helpers ensuring bountiful crops, it's time to think about preserving all that abundance for the months ahead. Growing food is only half the battle. Keeping it edible through winter is equally important. The Amish have perfected preservation methods that don't rely on electricity or expensive equipment, ensuring their harvests last through the lean months while maintaining nutritional value and flavor. The cornerstone of Amish food preservation is their root cellar system. Unlike modern basement storage, an Amish root cellar is a carefully engineered space that maintains optimal temperature and humidity naturally. They typically dig their cellars into north-facing slopes using the Earth's constant temperature to maintain a cool environment year-round. The traditional depth is about 10 feet, deep enough to stay cool in summer, but not so deep that it freezes in winter. Their cellars feature different storage zones with varying humidity levels. The back area, typically maintaining 95% humidity, houses root vegetables like carrots, beets, and potatoes. The middle section, at around 85% humidity, stores apples and pears. The front area, kept drier at 60 to 70% humidity, is perfect for onions, garlic, and winter squash. This zoning system can keep vegetables fresh for months. Some root vegetables remain crisp until the following spring. Canning is another crucial preservation method, but the Amish approach goes beyond basic water bath canning. They practice what they call sequential canning, processing foods in an order that maximizes both jar usage and energy efficiency. Early summer fruits are canned in jars that will be emptied and reused for late summer vegetables, which in turn make way for fall produce. This rotation system means each jar might be used 3 or 4 times in a season. Their pressure canning techniques for low-acid foods like vegetables and meats follow strict safety protocols while incorporating clever energy-saving methods. Multiple canners are often processed simultaneously using a single heat source. They've developed precise timing charts that allow different foods to be processed together despite varying requirements. For instance, combining quick cooking green beans with longer processing carrots by adding them to the canner at different times. Dehydration is perhaps their most efficient preservation method. Using passive solar drying techniques, they can dehydrate large quantities of food without any energy input. Their drying racks are often integrated into greenhouse designs, taking advantage of excess heat that would otherwise be vented. A single sunny day can dry enough herbs to last months, while fruits and vegetables might take 2 to 3 days to reach the perfect moisture content for long-term storage. The Amish have also perfected various fermentation techniques. Beyond traditional sauerkraut and pickles, they ferment a wide range of vegetables using what they call the succession method. As one batch nears completion, they use a portion of its brine to start the next batch, maintaining beneficial bacteria cultures throughout the season. This technique not only preserves food, but also enhances its nutritional value. Salt preservation plays a crucial role too, particularly for herbs and certain vegetables. Their method of herb salting, layering fresh herbs with salt in ceramic crocks, preserves both flavor and medicinal properties better than drying alone. The resulting herb salt mixture can be used throughout winter for both seasoning and medicinal purposes. One particularly clever Amish preservation technique involves using preserved foods to help preserve other foods. For example, they might layer dried apple slices between fresh root vegetables in storage, as the natural ethylene gas released by the apples helps prevent sprouting. Or they'll add a few fermented grape leaves to cucumber pickles, as the tannins help maintain crispness. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Amish food preservation is how it brings communities together. These time-tested methods work best when shared among many hands, and that's what really matters in life. While all the techniques we've explored are powerful on their own, the real magic happens when people work together. Studies have shown that collaborative gardening can increase productivity by up to 70% compared to individual efforts, and the Amish have turned this principle into an art form. Their system of community gardening goes far beyond simple labor sharing. It's a carefully orchestrated dance of skills, resources, and knowledge that makes every garden more productive than it could be alone. Take seed saving, for instance. Instead of each family trying to maintain all their own seed varieties, they distribute the responsibility. One family might focus on saving tomato seeds, another on beans, and yet another on corn. This specialization allows each keeper to become an expert in their assigned crops, resulting in stronger, better adapted varieties year after year. Tool sharing follows a similar pattern. Rather than every household needing to own and maintain every possible tool, communities create tool libraries. These aren't just storage spaces. They're knowledge centers where tools are maintained, skills are shared, and improvements are constantly developed. When someone discovers a better way to sharpen a hoe or modify a planting dibber, that knowledge quickly spreads throughout the community. The Amish practice of work frolic, their version of a barn raising but for gardens, can transform a week's worth of work into a single productive day. During these events, families rotate between gardens, tackling big projects like building trellises or preparing beds for winter. But it's not just about getting work done faster. These gatherings are also crucial knowledge-sharing opportunities, where techniques are demonstrated, problems are solved collectively, and innovations spread naturally. Their harvest sharing system is particularly ingenious. Instead of each family trying to grow everything they need, they coordinate their growing plans. One garden might focus on winter squash, while another specializes in root crops, with harvests shared among participants. This specialization allows each garden to be optimized for specific crops rather than trying to accommodate everything. The Amish have also perfected the art of succession planning across gardens. When one family's lettuce crop is peaking, another's is just getting started, ensuring a steady supply without waste. This coordination extends to preservation activities too. Community canning days make efficient use of equipment and energy while turning what could be overwhelming tasks into enjoyable social events. Their system for managing pests and diseases is remarkably effective because it operates at a community scale. When one gardener spots a problem, the news spreads quickly, allowing others to take preventive measures before the issue affects their gardens. They maintain community records of pest patterns, weather impacts, and successful management strategies, building a valuable knowledge base that improves outcomes year after year. Even their plant breeding programs operate at a community level. Different families will trial new varieties, carefully documenting performance and sharing results. The most successful varieties are then propagated and distributed throughout the community. This collaborative approach to plant breeding has resulted in numerous locally adapted varieties perfectly suited to their growing conditions. Most impressively, these collaborative practices create resilience. If one family faces challenges, whether it's illness, bad weather, or crop failure, the community ensures they still have access to fresh food and seeds for the next season. As one Amish farmer puts it, "When we grow together, we all grow stronger." Remember, while not all of us live in close-knit communities like the Amish, their principles of sharing and collaboration can be adapted to any situation. Whether it's splitting a seed order with a neighbor, sharing tool maintenance tips online, or organizing a community garden work day, every small step toward collaboration makes our gardens more productive and our communities stronger.